Having done a lot of videos on my channel about the new Tonex pedal and Tonex ecosystem in general, I do receive a lot of questions, whether in YouTube comments or private messages, concerning various aspects about how Tonex pedal works or how Tonex software works. And I wanted to do a video and kind of compile the answers to maybe the top 5 most asked questions that I get, and maybe help to dispel some myths and just sort of set the record straight on a few things that some folks don't seem to understand and that, like I said, I get a lot of questions on. So without further ado, let's dive in today. I think if you're a Tonex user, you're going to want to watch this, and I really truly hope that it helps you to understand how the whole Tonex ecosystem works on some very important points. Coming at number 5, and these aren't in any particular order, but I'm just going to start with this one because I think it's very important. And it's a really often asked question. Is there a huge difference between the different training times when we make a tone model capture? I've had people ask me, which training method do you use? Do you use advanced? Do you use default? Do you use fast? And I can say I've never used fast. But the answer to that is it depends. And I know a lot of folks think automatically that advanced training is going to always sound better because it takes longer. And that's not always the truth. And I'm going to give you some audio examples today. I have done a video on this in the past, but I think it's something that's worth revisiting. The answer as to whether I use advanced or default is actually really dependent on the situation. What I do when I'm making tone models is I actually capture one of each. I'm fortunate enough to have a computer system that is fast enough that I can actually do these tests without eating up many hours of time. My default training time is just over 3 minutes. My advanced training time is just around 15 to 15 and a half minutes. And until today, when I did this test, I'd never even tested the fast setting, but I can do that in about 1.5 minutes. Usually when I'm about to capture a specific amp, I do multiple tone models at advanced and default, and I listen back to them and I pick the ones that I think represent the sound of that amp the best. It's going to be very subtle when we're talking about advanced to default, but sometimes, believe it or not, the default is preferable. So this doesn't have anything to do with whether, I just feel like getting through the default training faster. It really comes down to listening and making good judgment as to what represents the model you're dealing with the best. So let's do this. What I did is I did a tone model right before shooting this video. It's a tone model of my Friedman Pink Taco version 2 amplifier set to a relatively high gain sound, because I think that if you're going to hear differences between the advanced and default, it's going to be in the higher gain settings. So what I did is I set up a sound very quickly, dialed it in so that it has a nice sound to it. I'm happy with the way it came out. Mic'd it with a Bayer M160 ribbon mic into a really nice Neve style Golden Age Project mic preamplifier, and I captured it. And I did one capture where I used advanced training, one capture where I used default training, and one capture where I used the fast training. I figured I might as well do it. It's almost no extra time investment in it, so let's just see how big a difference there is between these. Then I recorded a little DI guitar track, and I reamped that through the exact same setup, so the real amp. And I recorded the real amp track. Then I duplicated that DI track on 3 other tracks, added an instance of Tonex on each, one set to the advanced capture, one set to the default capture, and one set to the fast capture. I made sure to go in and volume match these to within 0.1 dB so that we're not being skewed by any volume differences. I'm going to play you a short audio snippet of the real amp, followed by the advanced, followed by the default, followed by the fast. Then I'm going to shorten that snippet so we're hearing a very short bit of audio and go through those again back and forth a few times so you can really hear the difference. And at the end of that, I'm going to give you kind of a blind test where I've taken a longer riff and I've edited it at certain maybe non-musical points throughout where it's going to switch between the various ones without you knowing. And I want to just see if anybody can really tell where it switches between the real amp, the advanced, the default, and the fast. And I will give you the answers after that. But it's just interesting. And I think instead of me telling you, well, this is the way it is, advanced is better or default is better, really I have no right to do that. I'd rather let you hear for yourself in a properly performed test. So here we go. First is going to be the little audio clips. You'll see on the screen what you're listening to, and you can form your opinions about it as you listen. I'll come back with my opinions after. All right, what did you guys think? In this case, believe it or not, I preferred the default. I found that the advanced, and depending on your listening system, you really need to listen to this on either good headphones or a good set of speakers. But I found the advanced actually was slightly darker. And, maybe that's just my ears, but I found it a little tiny bit darker. I actually found the default more accurate in this case. Obviously, the fast had some sizzle, maybe some aliasing going on in the higher end. That was pretty obvious, and I feel in a blind test I would pretty accurately pick that one out just about every time. But anyways, we really have no reason to be using the fast anyways, unless you have a very old computer system. But surprisingly, the fast was usable. It didn't sound terrible, but there was definitely something going on in the upper end, a sizzle there that you could easily pick out. But between the advanced and the default, in this particular case, I actually preferred the default. Now, like I said, on my system, I can do advanced or default very easily. But if I was to do both of these, I would probably share the default one in this because I think that it sounded more realistic when compared to the real amp. Now let's go take a listen to this compilation I did. First, I'll play it for you blind, and then we'll play it showing and notating exactly where those edit points were. All right, so there's the blind version. Now let's listen again and see on screen where these edit points actually were. All right, so what do you guys think? Like I said, I've already given my opinion about it. Some folks may disagree with me. That's okay. I think in the end, the difference between the advanced and the default is going to be rather subtle. So it's really going to be up to a person to decide, especially depending on their system. Do they want to take the extra time? On my old system, it took me 8 hours to do an advanced model, right? Where it took an hour to do a default model. That's a huge time difference. So, you have to decide, is it worth that extra, let's say 7 hours, if it's the same timing on your system, to get that little tiny bit of benefit, or maybe no benefit at all. Maybe we actually would just prefer the default. So I guess the takeaway here is don't always assume that an advanced tone model is going to be superior. And remember, when you're listening to other tone models, you don't really have the real amp to compare it to like I gave you today. So a lot of folks will say things like, oh, that sounds more accurate. And you go, how do you know? You weren't in the room. You didn't hear a recording of the real amp. It was trying to model. So we don't really know whether it's more accurate or not. I think in the end, the really important takeaway though is, how does it sound? Does it sound good? Are we happy playing with it? And if the answer is yes to that, then I think we should maybe just forget everything else and get on with playing and enjoy the tone models. Coming to number 4, how do I import and export presets, and where do my presets live on my computer? So coming over here to Tonex, we have our Tonex interface here. You can see I have some of my presets up here. But if I come over here to the tone model tab and I right click on the tone models, you'll notice that I have the option to edit or delete that tone model or to upload it to ToneNet. But if I come over to my preset tab and I click on a preset now, you'll notice I have the option to delete it, to export the preset, or to import a new preset. So if I hit import here, it'll take me to a location on my computer where I can choose to import a particular preset. Likewise, if I hit export, it will take me to a place where I can export. And it's really that simple. Now, I have had some folks contact me that are working on Mac computers that are having right-click problems. And that really, I think, is an issue with something to do with settings in the Mac. I really can't confidently talk to that point because I'm not a Mac user, but some folks told me that using a trackpad, if they clicked with 2 fingers, it brought up the right click option. So I hope that that gets sorted out so that the handful of people on certain Mac systems and with certain trackpads aren't going to have that issue. But it is a right click on the preset tab. So it's a big difference. If we're on the tone model tab, we're going to have the ability to right click and either upload, edit, or delete. If we're on the preset, yes, we can delete that preset, but we can also export or import that preset. And to save a preset, we just come to this little folder button and we can make our settings in here. So I hope that that's helpful. Now, where do the presets live on our, again, I am on a Windows 11 based computer and I'm over in my documents folder. I'm sure it's something similar on Mac, but I'm in my IK Multimedia folder and you'll notice we have some options here. Now, the problem is a lot of folks would go into Amplitude 5, Amplitude 5 users, and they could come into the preset folder and actually just kind of load presets right into here. And you see I have some of my Amplitude 5 presets in here. And that was a very easy way to work. But when we go into Tonex, you'll notice what we do have here is a library database file. And this is where our files are stored. So there's really no way to just come to this file and take it out. I do think there are some really cool tools out there that we can access the separate files in the database and make changes to it. But for now, for anybody who's just working with the Tonex plugin or standalone, you're going to come to your preset tab. You're going to right click and you're going to be able to export and import presets. So if you have a preset here, don't go to a folder to try to find it. You can just export it and then choose the location. You want it on your desktop, you hit desktop and you'd export it to there. Another top question I get is, what does the gain knob do inside a preset or a tone model once we've captured it? We will notice that once we make a tone model, all the settings are at noon. So those settings are going to represent the way that that tone model was captured. Doesn't mean all the settings were on noon on the amp. They're going to be set however the person making the tone model set them. It's also going to represent which mic they used and where that mic was placed and any other EQ type signal processing that they put in the chain. They could have heavily EQ'd it with outboard EQ before hitting Tonex and capturing the model. So we don't know what anybody did to their models, but we do know that the final outcome with all of those parameters at 5 or at noon is going to represent the way that tone model sounds. Now, what does the gain knob do? So I've done another video on this before and really used a null test to prove that the gain knob, as it says in the manual, I don't know why this was ever really something that folks were arguing about, but a lot of folks were, the gain knob is just an input control. How much input is hitting the front of the amp? Much in the same way if I turn my guitar volume up and down. So I'm on my Brit Silver OD1 Dark preset here from my Brit Silver Ultimate Tone Model Bundle, which is available at my website at the link below if you're interested in taking a look at that. And this sounds like this. Absolutely killer amp. Now, if I'm to turn my volume down on my guitar, roll it back in. It cleans up much like we would expect the amp to. What happens when I utilize the gain knob to do the same thing? And just back to the setting that it was originally captured at. So really, this gain control is just an input control and how much signal is hitting the front end of the amp model, and therefore, whether it's going to saturate it more, saturate it less, clean up, get more distorted, however you want to refer to that. Another top question I get is, can I or should I use the EQ after the fact to tweak the tone model in some way? And I've done a video on this before. There's one school of thought where people go, no, that's not the way the amp sounds. We've messed with it. The tone model is destroyed now. It's no longer any good. That could be further from the truth. I mean, here's the reality of it. When somebody is capturing a tone model, that amp sounds a certain way in the room. Nobody else is going to know what that amp sounds like. They're not in that room. Now they choose a microphone, which is going to have a huge effect on the final outcome of the tone model. Where they place that microphone is going to have a massive effect on the outcome of the sound. The outboard equipment they run it through, they could run it through various styles of mic preamplifiers, which is going to have sometimes a subtle effect, sometimes a not so subtle effect, depending on the mic preamp and how it's set. But then are they running it through an equalizer and EQing it at that point? Well, would that destroy the tone model? Well, no, it's just another tool that the tone model creator could use to get the final results. I'm not saying everybody does that or anybody does that, but I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. So we really aren't just capturing the amp, we are capturing an entire signal chain of microphone, mic placement, outboard gear that ends up being the final tone model. So you could give 5 tone model creators the identical amp and even the identical microphone and identical signal chain. You're going to come out with numerous different outcomes. So really, you may say, well, why are you talking about that? Well, how is that any different than going into Tonex after the fact and saying, you know, this particular tone model is a little bit dark, I'm going to brighten it up a bit, or it's a little bit bright, I'm going to darken it up a bit, or I want to add, you know, whatever frequency or take whatever frequency away. You're not going to destroy the tone model. It's perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly fine. And in fact, it's probably even necessary because everybody's monitoring system is going to be different. Everybody's guitar is going to be different. Everybody's tastes are going to be different. Everybody's room that they're listening to in is going to be different. And those all have a very large effect on the final outcome of the sound. So coming back over here to my Brit Silver OD1 Dark, I've made a dark version and a bright version. So here's the bright version of it. Darker version. I really think that the Marshall Silver Jubilee does a beautiful, dark, smooth tone, and I wanted to capture different feels of that amplifier. Now, you'll notice I've made subtle little tweaks to it after the fact, but if I just come in here and move everything back to where it was by default, very nice tone. But if somebody did say, you know, I think that's a little dark, you can come in here with very subtle moves on the presence and maybe depth. If you so desired, bring in a little more treble. And you have something that might be more to your liking. Not that there was ever anything wrong with it to start with, but it really depends on the guitar you're using, the monitoring system you're using. I'm using a guitar that has a bit of a dark sound, my Vigier GV Wood semi-hollow body. So it's really going to be dependent on taste, but these controls can be invaluable. I've done videos about how I feel that the presence and the depth controls are actually probably 2 of the most important controls we can have in our Tonex software. And we can use these in a very subtle manner to get a lot of mileage out of it and really tweak a tone model. So it's still going to sound like the same amplifier, just with a nice tweak. Much in the same way as the person creating the tone model could have moved the microphone back or moved it on or off axis, which would have acted very much like an equalizer would have. So there is no problem with making small adjustments or even large adjustments. In the end, again, if it sounds good, then carry on and start playing. And quite possibly the most popular question I see asked that actually has kind of angered a lot of people, but I'm hoping this is a feature that changes in the future, is can I edit Tonex pedal presets and tone models from the software? And unfortunately, the answer is no, not at this present time. So you see here, we're in the standalone Tonex. We have our librarian tab. I do have my Tonex pedal hooked up. So if I click on the librarian tab, you'll notice I'm connected firmware 1.0.5. I can go up here and, do things like checking for firmware and update and whatnot. So this is showing the different presets and tone models that I have on my pedal. Now, if I click one of these, we can't just go over to the player and say, oh, I'm going to tweak that. You'll notice I'm still stuck over here on Black Angus. So there's nothing I can do to edit these presets and tone models that are on the pedal. So this upper panel here in the librarian is showing you what's on your pedal and the position. We can go down here into the bottom panel, which is showcasing what is in our software. So if we want a particular preset to be transferred to our pedal, I could come and search for my Brit Silver and say, oh, I want the Brit Silver Ultimate Push 1 and I need that on my pedal, I have to go over here to the player tab first. You'll notice once I select it over here, I can go to the player tab, I can tweak it. Then I come over to librarian tab and I simply drag and drop it to the position I want. It's asking me if I want to overwrite that, and now it is on my pedal. If I do want to tweak that, I want to add some presence or some depth or what have you, I just go to my pedal and I can do that from the hardware. I agree it would be very nice at some point if we could click on one of these and have an interface with all of the controls over here and make the changes and have it automatically update and save it immediately to the pedal. But this is not an editor at this point. We have to make our tweaks in the Tonex software. We then have to save that preset, and then we have to drag it onto the pedal. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you how it is on this. I've actually talked to folks at IK about this, and I've put that idea into them, and hopefully it's something that they can develop. I have no knowledge of whether it is coming or whether they can do it, but let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. All right, so there you have it. What do you guys think? I hope that that was helpful. I really do. Those are the most popular questions I get. If you see anybody asking those, maybe just point to this video and it can help answer those questions. Sometimes it's easier when you have the visuals to see exactly what we can do and can't do with the pedal, with the software, and what we are and aren't, quote unquote, allowed to do. So I really do hope that was helpful. I'm going to leave you today with the demo video for my most recent release, which is the Brit Silver Ultimate Tone Model Bundle. There is a free tone model up on ToneNet if you want to grab that as a sample, but the full tone model bundle is available at my website at the link below. If you like what you hear and you'd like to support my channel and you're so inclined, you can go grab that, and I hope you enjoy those tone models. I've been having a lot of fun messing around with them and playing through them, and I hope you do too. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Please like the video, share it with anybody you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it, and also please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Hope you enjoy this audio demo for the way out. Thanks again for sharing your time with me. Ciao for now.